Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys, a former D1 Hooper, current high school coach, teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And me, Omari Sacco, for the second Detroit Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And we're coming to you from Denver. What hotel are we in, Omari?
The Sheridan.
Yeah,
the Sheridan. Bryce made the trip up from Kansas, and I think what was that, like a 4-hour drive?
4.5 hour drive up here.
Yeah, and I think this is the third pod we have recorded in a hotel room.
You know what's funny, Omari? I just realized this. The first pod we ever did together was actually in person. Back when this was Motor City Hoops and out at Summer League. I know a lot of the listeners know that story, but that was you came over to the hotel and we recorded in first. I think that was the first time I ever recorded in person with anybody. But then we did 313 Day last year, and then now. So we've done it in Detroit, in Vegas, and now in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah. So for those who've been having audio issues, now I'm using Bryce's mic. So it's all good.
Yeah, we can blame my mic now if there's any audio issues with that. But I do want to shout out Atra. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you reached out to me in my Twitter DMs and you just wanted us to shout out all the Irish Pistons fans. So last week we were shouting out all the different countries. Yeah. And it was funny, right? Because Twitter was about to shut down this week. So everybody was getting out their final things. And so shout out all of our Irish Pistons fans. And again, like whatever country, whatever continent, it is really, really cool. Omari and I, Wes and I, we always talk about that. The Pistons fans all over the place. And I know, Omari, you've ran into some of our listeners this last week. So it's really cool to see anymore.
Yeah, no doubt. Shout out to Andrew Cohn as well. Saw you in Los Angeles not after the Lakers game, but during halftime. And, it was just good to hear, some kind words about the pod. So, if you ever see me in public or you see Bryce in public, and Bryce is probably a little more recognizable being 6'6", but shout us out. Always happy to talk to you all and, talk ball or whatever else. So, good week for the brand, I would say.
No doubt. We got our pictures out on social media, Twitter.
Pictures out on social media. Thanks again to David for spending an hour with us downtown and, in my tears because I was so cold and being patient for all that. That was great. So, we've been growing and the listenership has been rock solid. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Omari, not the greatest news leading into this episode. I think the last time we recorded, Cade was out, but Cade was not out for, I don't want to say the season. We'll get into this, what we think is going to end up happening. But the Pistons announced shin splints that turned into a stress fracture that turned into shin splints. What can you give our listeners? I mean, I know that it's all been reported, but can you break down just the little bit we do know straight from the team?
The Pistons haven't commented on it in an official capacity yet. The last we heard from the team officially was that he was eligible to return on Sunday against the Kings, which obviously didn't happen. But, of course, the reporting, I tweeted Saturday that they believe he has a stress fracture in his left shin. And they're figuring out treatment options now. By the time we're recording this Monday night, by the time folks listen to this on Tuesday, maybe some more news will come out or maybe shortly after, but they're just figuring out treatment options, do we let him rest? And if you allow the injury to heal with rest, that's a little bit more of a vague timeline because it kind of just comes down to his body and when he heals. So they would just shut him down and, just wait for the leg to heal and just go from there. Or more invasive, obviously, surgery, which gives you a more concrete timeline and undergo surgery, for a fact that you kind of address the issue and he can heal, but that would keep him out for a much longer period of time. So not great news. I mean, I think even if he, goes the rest option, I could still have him miss a pretty, significant amount of time, just depending on what his body, decides to do as far as him healing and if he can get to the points where he can play. But I think long story short, Cade's going to be out for a while.
I mean, I'll be honest, Omari, I feel like I'm prepping myself not to see Cade Cunningham again this season. Yeah. If it is, maybe he gets back and they decide that they don't want him to go a whole year without playing, so you play him 10 or 15 games at the end of the season. But at that point, I think we all know the situation the Pistons are going to be in, and you even want to risk the possibility of some sort of other injury for, no reason. So I just that's where my mind is at as a fan. I know you have a completely different perspective, just like as a guy that covers the team. Is that how you're kind of prepping this, or just literally taking it day by day? Maybe we'll know more here in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking it day by day right now, just because one, I'm not a doctor, and even if things appear a certain way, I just like to kind of let things play out before I give people a reason to panic. But but I would say, actually the account on Twitter in Street Clothes, he does great work as far as just comparing injuries to other players and what their recovery was, and and it could often be a season-ending injury, just based on the fact that I think even Rodney Magruder, he was saying that he had that stress fracture surgery.
Poor Rodney Magruder. In the article I read, said former NBA player Rodney Magruder. I was like, no, Rodney's still in the. Not only is Rodney not still in the league, Omari, he literally plays on the same team as Cade Cunningham.
He's still here. Saw him at practice today, actually. I can confirm he's still on the roster. But Rodney had his surgery in October, and he missed 60 games. And obviously, it's an 82-game season, so you have it after games. I don't know when he had it, but I just know it was October, so probably no more than 7 games passed. And, so that makes sense why he was able to come back. Cade, he's missed the last 6 games. They played 18. So, after game 12 or whatever, if he has surgery and makes you miss 60 games, then that puts you at game 72. And at that point, are you going to bring him back in April? And it's just, I'm not reporting he's going to miss a season or anything. I'm just saying, it's a situation where he's going to miss a lot of time.
Yeah.
And, obviously not what you want to see, for a second season. Just not a great situation overall, obviously. But, it's something he's dealing with, and the team's going to figure out best way to treat it, and they'll go from there.
So I do have a question, Omari, because did this go all the way back to last season? I feel like I don't want to say there's mixed reports, but I don't know that there's firm reporting. And so a lot of the fan base is did this go all the way back to last season, carry over into the off season, into the preseason, and then just all of a sudden flare up really bad? Because I know some fans are like, well, if it was bothering him last season, why didn't they fix it over the off season, that type of thing? And again, I know you're not a doctor, but can you speak to that just a little bit with this injury and the whole situation around it?
Yeah, I don't think the soreness is new. I guess what's unclear to me, at least, is, was a stress fracture always the cause of the soreness? Because it could have just been it was sore, and then the stress fracture occurred at a later date. So, I would I know, I saw people on Twitter saying Pistons mishandled it, this and that. I don't think they mishandled it. I think the nature of a stress fracture is a use injury, right? You play on it, you use it, and sometimes your body breaks down a little bit. I highly doubt they would have had him, going through everything he went through, if he was playing on a stress fracture this whole time. And I believe it's actually a hairline fracture, which, of course, isn't always obvious, right?
Yeah.
Even this week, we've seen Cade, not practicing, but getting shots.
He was warming up before the Kings game, right?
He was warming up before the Kings game. He was getting some shots up today. So, he's still walking around and whatnot. It's just kind of reading between the lines. It seems like a situation where, if it was me, I'd probably be I'm not a professional basketball player, so I'll just let it hit on its own. I'm not doing anything too intense. But when you're doing that level, it's a little bit of a different thing, and you keep playing on it, it could get worse, obviously. So it just kind of got to that point. But the soreness isn't due. Whether or not the stress fracture is due, that's something Cade and his doctor knows, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what I do want to say, it does make me wonder about how this affected his play and the fact he was putting up the numbers he was playing through the pain. Because obviously he had pain. Because I remember going back to the first game, they showed the bench and he had the wrap on it already, game 1 of the season. Yeah. And I remember kind of in hindsight now thinking back, I remember thinking in the moment, man, that's kind of weird already for game 1. And then now in hindsight, it makes sense. But it also makes sense why his 3-point shot was a struggle at times. Yeah. And I remember people were in my DMs going are we sure this was good that Cade put on extra weight? He looks kind of slow. And I was like, I don't know. But, if he didn't look quite as explosive, now we kind of have a reason why. Yeah. And so he was putting up great numbers while playing through pain. And I know NBA players are always playing through something. But I think it could explain some of the 3-point shooting inefficiency, but also just impressive that he was able to do what he was through this injury.
No doubt. So, and let's say we just assume he's going to have surgery because that is obviously on the table, and I think ultimately could prove to be the best option where the team just says, let's not play around with this. Let's put him under the knife. Let's get it fixed. He can heal. This season is probably a wash. So, let's just get him right. And then we can move on and look forward to next season. It could just be a situation where, he's been dealing with soreness for a while, but I mean, a lot of people are still like, I woke up with collarbone soreness the other week, like I didn't think I had a broken collarbone. Again, I think some of the timeline stuff is fuzzy, but they have a handle on what they believe it is now. And, again, just unfortunate, but I think now the team knows what it is, and now they can actually have a course of action. I'm not comparing him to this player, but Michael Jordan misses his sophomore season or most of it, right? Players get hurt. Like, it is what it is. It's not a knee, it's an injury you could come back from. And, from a fan standpoint, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but, there's a season where Cade has to get hurt. That's probably a good one, looking at next year's drafts and everything else. Like, in the end, it could end up being fine. So I'll just leave it at that.
Let's talk about the fallout from that. There's a bunch of different perspectives here and angles. And I think the first one is for Jaden Ivey and Killian Hayes. And the thing is, both of these guys have been playing well. Killian is playing the best ball of his career. I feel very confident to say that Killian Hayes is on the best 7-8 game stretch of his entire career. Scoring the basketball, the defense has been there. He's been aggressive. Even when he isn't making shots, he's at least being aggressive and being confident. Jaden Ivey has been playing well. And I do think the silver lining in all of this, Omari, is we're going to get a lot of Jaden Ivey playing on-ball creator, and we're going to get a lot of Killian Hayes minutes. We're going to find out a lot about those two guys this season.
Yeah, we are. I think the current run Killian is on started a little bit before Cade went out, but obviously times well. We talked about the confidence issues he was having, like Dwayne talked about the confidence issues, and he seems like he's gotten over a lot of that. Like, sometimes you just got to see some shots fall, right?
Yeah.
And he's been hitting, he's been shooting the ball well. Like, he's been shooting the ball really well on, like, decent volume, like 3 attempts a game. I know he was at, like, 39% from 3, and then I think he hit 2 last night. So now he's probably got about 40, 41. I didn't check after last night's game. But, long story short, he's starting to look like a credible 3-point threat. And we talk about it a lot. But the line for Killian to go from a mediocre offensive player to a passable offensive player is not that big of a line, right? Like, just knock down threes reliably, and you're pretty much there because the defense is already there. And the passing is already there. And if you can knock down threes, well, now you're basically a 380 point guard, which, maybe some fans thought he was going to be Manu Ginobili or whatever. But, I think he could be a very productive role-playing guard if he continues to shoot the ball the way he's shooting it down. Even if he dips down to like 36%, I think that's good enough, right? Like, if he can become like a reliable 36, 37% shooter, that's a massive improvement, and I think you would have no issues playing him in most lineups.
Well, and he's been shooting it good from the mid-range too, Omari. And so, like, I know people are like, oh, he's got to get to the rim. He's got to get to the – well, Killian Hayes is also a flawed basketball player. Yeah. I think we'd agree on that. So he's not the worst player in the NBA, but he's also not a perfect NBA player. No. If Killian Hayes is a 2-level scorer from 3 in the mid-range – good passer and a defender. Like, are you kidding me? That ends up actually being decent value even for the number 7 pick, and I think we have to remove that label from him anyway. Yeah. But yes, it would be nice if he could get to the rim more, but if he gets confidence in that mid-range pull-up along with the 3, that's all of a sudden a really nice offensive game for him.
That's, and there's some, good NBA guards who do not finish at the rim at a high clip. Like, that's not a depth sentence for a point guard. Like, I don't think Fred VanVleet's ever been like a great at the rim finisher, and he's like my height, so I'm sure that's the reason why. Yeah. But but he can really shoot the ball. He can defend. He can move it, and he's a starting point guard for a good Raptors team. So again, I think we talk about him just having to pick one lane to be good at, but really the most important lane I think is just knocking out threes. Yep. And if he can do that reliably, then I think you can play him in pretty much any lineup. You play him next to Cade, next to Jaden. Like, there really isn't any, downsides to that. There's
a lot of overlap between Killian Hayes and Isaiah Stewart to me, because the 3-point shot being the X factor, because they bring so much versatility defensively, and then that 3-point shot allows them to be versatile offensively in the lineups you play them with. And so let's talk about Jaden Ivey. What do you think this does for Jaden Ivey? I think there's a negative in that. I mean, Jaden's going to be asked to handle the basketball a lot the rest of this season. And there may be some bad stretches, Omari, where he turns the ball over a lot or just is making poor decisions. But I also think it's going to be good for the evaluation of Jaden Ivey. We've talked about on this podcast that maybe he's not a true lead guard, well, he's going to play a lot of true lead guard this year. We're going to find out how much potential he has to do that in the NBA.
It's going to be the Jaden Ivey show, right?
Yeah, it is.
He's going to get a lot of minutes. He's already gotten a lot of minutes, so it won't be a big change in that standpoint. I think, in a sense, it'll be interesting because, a big talking point when he got drafted by the Pistons was his point guard skills were a weakness in college, and now he's on a team where he's not going to be relied upon as the main point guard. He can kind of pick his spots, and Cade will handle most of the playmaking. And now we're in a scenario where, he may have to play most of the season without Cade. So the Pistons are going to need him to be that type of playmaker. Which his playmaking hasn't been good, hasn't been great, but it's been good. He sees the floor, he can make, passes and whatnot. But beyond that, whatever numbers he's been putting up, I'm sure he'll continue to try to put them up. His efficiency's kind of been up and down over the course of the season. We've kind of seen him go through some of those rookie pains, but he's going to have as much time and space as he needs to figure it out. And, if there's a silver lining, I think just him and Killian, kind of taking over the reins from Cade. This could be a big year of growth for them, which get up the Pistons down the road.
Yeah. What about the rest of this season just in general? What does it mean for some other guys? What's it mean for a guy like Bojan Bogdanovic who got the extension? I think when he got the extension, a lot of the fan base, there was still talk hey, you can still trade him. This maybe makes him more tradable because he signed on for another year now. And then you have the non-guaranteed year in the final year of that contract. Do you think it makes those guys more expendable? Maybe it makes them less expendable because you don't want to just completely go young. Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, I don't know that it changes a lot for him. What does the rest of this season look like, in your opinion, now that Cade Cunningham is out? And we haven't even talked about yet the injuries to Isaiah Stewart, and Sadiq Bey is no longer even on this road trip. They sent him back to Detroit. So the rest of this West Coast swing is going to be really tough for the Pistons.
Yeah, well, Troy Weaver, that media day said we want to compete every night. And the injury bug said absolutely not. That's not going to happen. You're not going to have a healthy roster for most of the season. And just timing-wise, it's just Burks was out, Noel was out, Bagley was out. Those guys come back, and now, your 2020 and 2021 draft picks are getting hurt. So it's just been a revolving door of injuries. But I think broadly, it certainly – whatever the best case scenario for the season was, that's not the case anymore. And this is very clearly going to be a lottery team, and probably not that much better than they were last year when they won 23 games, right? I think it's pretty obvious at this point that unless Ivy makes a big leap, unless Killian makes a big leap, and you just get big contributions from some of the other guys, Sadiq, whatnot, maybe that could save the season somewhat. But there's something for this team and the floor for this team, just lower across the board. So the extent that impacts the front office's decisions on certain guys, I think it's probably too early to say. I think some of those things will kind of crystallize as we get closer to the trade deadline. But I think the reality is that even if everybody's hurt, you can still have a really solid core of players here. Bogdanovic is under contract, so even if you don't move him in February, if you want to move him down the road, you can, but you don't have to, right? Burks, Noel, those guys still have team options next summer, so you can still part ways with them, have access to that cap space if you want it. I think long-term, the goals of this team have not changed, right? Whatever you want to accomplish down the road, you can still do that. It's just this season, maybe it crystallizes a lot sooner that we are a lottery team. We're not making the play-in. We're not even going to come close to the play-in. And you have some carrots at the end of the stick, and Wemby and Scoot and some of the other guys. And it's just a lot more obvious that the season is not going to be the leap forward that I think a lot of fans probably, and, even some people with the team probably would have wanted to see this season.
Yeah. I think the fans, the team, people, NBA at large, we're talking about the Pistons as a play-in team. And we'll talk about those expectations here in just a little bit, Amari. And I just want to reiterate, we haven't seen the 10-man rotation, what we would assume would be the 10-man rotation. We haven't seen it in a single game this season. And we won't now, right, with Cade out. They went to the Stu Bagley big man lineup for one game, and they got to play, 12 minutes or something like that, and then Stu got hurt. So the injury bug, and every team gets injured. Well, the Pistons are already at a disadvantage because they were young and not super talented, and then you start taking away the best player and the third best player and another starter and the bench unit. It just continued to snowball, and it is kind of disappointing we never are going to get to see this team. It would have been interesting to see them, even for a 15 or 20 game stretch, see that 10-man rotation. How good could those starters have been? Yeah. How good could that second unit have been together?
Yeah, it's just tough. This is a team that I think on paper, again, like we talked before the season, and I don't think we ever necessarily saw the play-in as a realistic, it's a realistic goal, but you're going to need a lot of help from the teams in front of you.
Agreed.
I think, just because I think every team in the East except like the Pistons and
the
Magic have at least one proven all-star, and those teams don't. So you have to see leaps from certain guys to get to that point, but also outplay some of the teams that have already made that leap. And because of that, I just don't think either of us saw like maybe higher than a 13th place finish.
Yep.
So yeah, like now that's probably going to be a lot more obvious that they're not going to finish higher than that. But even the best case scenario for this team, I think probably was not as high as maybe some of the expectations were set by Troy saying, we're, at ground zero and this and that. Like all that can be true. You can compete every night. Maybe your net rating is, minus 0.1. But regardless, I just don't know if the wins were going to be there. So, to have this conversation in November instead of, March or February, and whenever it seems clearly outside of the race, I probably didn't guess that 2 months ago. But we're here, and, the season has kind of reshaped a bit, and you just go from there.
So what does this mean for the state of the restoration as a whole? I did a Twitter Spaces the other day, and this question got brought up. Like, does this set the restoration back a year? And I'll just give my quick answer, Amari. I don't think it does. In all honesty, it may actually speed the restoration up. And I know we don't want to get into this yet, but if you draft Victor Wembanyama, all of a sudden you come back next year with a healthy Cade and a Victor who's going to be ready to contribute in the NBA day one because he's been playing professional. Yeah. Even if it's Scoot, and I know we don't got to get into these conversations. There's fit concerns with Scoot for some of the fan base, but he's been playing professional for 2 years now. And I realize it's the G League, but it's still professional basketball. And so I don't think, at the very least, I don't think it changes the timetable at all. You could have a top 1 or top 2 pick in a generational guy in Wemby, and then you also have all this cap space. Now, it depends on what you're actually able to do with that cap space, but I don't think it changes the goals for next season and the Pistons probably trying to truly be competitive and maybe make that jump into the play-in game. I don't think this injury changes that whatsoever.
No, I don't think so either. Maybe just from watching Cade develop chemistry with his young teammates.
Okay, that's good, yeah.
It hurts a little bit. But I think even if you just get like the 3rd or 4th or 5th pick in this draft, just add another guy. Because I think this draft is just like the top 6, I think is like pretty strong overall. Even if you just get another top 5 or 6 pick, I think that helps a lot. I think Ivy having the reins, I think Killian having the reins, I think especially for Killian being in year 3 and he'll be extension eligible next offseason and, maybe he goes to restricted free agency in 2024. You get a lot more information on him being a starter than you do with him coming off the bench playing 17 minutes a night. And eventually when you make those judgment calls down the road, you have a lot more information, which I think helps. And again, I don't think this delays the restoration or anything. I think we know who Cade is to an extent.
Yep.
Maybe haven't seen the peak version of him yet, but it's year 2. I mean, Wolf Tatum doing his 2nd year, like he wasn't Tatum. It's normal for guys to kind of, take a while to kind of get to the point to where they're like a superstar level. And we've seen, star players weather injuries early in their careers too. So this isn't like an ACL or an Achilles or anything where you have genuine concerns about the longevity of their career. Overall, I don't think this really hurts the restoration. It just hurts maybe the watchability of this team for a lot of fans.
Well, let's talk about that, Amari. Yeah. After this short break, we brought up the expectations coming into the season. We've talked about the injuries. We've talked about the watchability. You just brought it up. After this break, we're going to talk about that and where that should be and what's fair to judge the players, the coaches, and everybody else in the organization through the rest of this season.
I'm Alyssa Robinson for the Detroit Free Press. When you wake up every morning, what's the first thing you do? Check your email? Me too. And when you sign up for our daily briefing newsletter, you'll get all the latest news sent directly to your inbox so you can wake up and be ready for the day. We also have newsletters about COVID-19 in Michigan, the latest entertainment headlines, as well as Woodward 248, a newsletter specifically for people living and working in Southeast Oakland County. And don't forget about automotive headlines and all the latest news from our Michigan sports teams. We have a newsletter for every personality and preference. Just head to freep.com/newsletters to sign up for any one of these great options and more.
All right, we're back here with segment 2. And we're going to talk about some of the players, but I did want to get into this first because it feels like Sunday was sort of a turning point for a lot of people where it was like, oh, this team actually is not good, and maybe I'm at the end of my rope as far as like how much of this I can like watch, which like, okay, like this team won 20 games 2 years ago. They won 23 games last year. They won probably around 20 the year before, but that was before I covered them. So, I can't recall the number.
That was before I was here too, Amari. We came in about the same time. So
that was the Christian Wood year.
Oh yeah.
But this team's been bad, for a few years. And I think, from a fan standpoint, watching a bad team multiple years in a row and, this year, like, okay, it's year 2 for Cade. We have some young guys. And this team couldn't make a leap. And now it's very clear, less than 20 games into the year, that's probably not going to happen. I understand why there would be some palpable frustration, but it also kind of surprised me that you don't have Cade, you don't have Sadiq, you don't have Isaiah, and his Kings team is actually good. And
they'd won 5 in a row coming into the game and scoring all sorts of points.
Yeah, and they were at home.
Yeah.
Really, that game shouldn't have been as close as it was.
No.
And I guess it was surprising to me that was the breaking point for a lot of people. Because to me, I'm going into that game and I'm like, on paper, like, Pistons missing 3 of their top 5 guys probably shouldn't even be in this.
Amari, 3 minutes into the game, I almost wrote in the notes that they're going to get blown out. Like, it just had the vibe that this team was in shell shock from Cade, and this Kings team was going to score the ball, and they weren't even going to be close.
Yeah, and they competed. Jacob Ivey was their leading scorer. He had his best game in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. Killian was good. He got some good, minutes from Duren. Who had I think he had 8 and 12 or something along the lines of that. You see enough. Burks had a great game. Like, I thought that was a really good game from this team can compete standpoint. Even if you still lost, I thought that was kind of an example of kind of like the quote unquote perfect loss where it's like exciting and whatnot. And I was just really surprised that people were so upset after, because I was like, if you want this team to get Wemby, like, is that not like the best case scenario? Like, that's what you should be rooting for.
You had a high scoring game where the Pistons shot 53% from the field, 52% from 3. Then it turned the ball over a lot, and then just had a tough loss at the end. And my thing is, we always talk about moving the goalposts is, okay, we knew this team, as soon as Cade got hurt, everybody's like, oh, they're only going to win 15 games this year. Yeah. And then you go play a good Kings team on the road in the middle of a West Coast road trip without 3 starters. And then all of a sudden you expect them to pull out a tough road win. I'm not saying there weren't mistakes made. I'm not saying there weren't mistakes made by Dwayne Casey. I'm not saying there weren't mistakes made by the players, because there definitely were on both. We could get into the weeds on all that stuff, Amari. There's a turnover by Boyan that I think truly led to a lot of this when the Pistons really had a lot of momentum. There's things with Coach Casey I'd love to see some more, offensive creativity. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the team wasn't very good coming into the season. They're missing 3 starters. If you want to say Bey was no longer a starter, that's fine. 2 starters and you're 6th man. And you had a heck of a game. Yeah. And then you just lost it in crunch time. And that's what bad teams do, Amari. Bad teams lose games in crunch time. Yeah. And the Kings right now aren't a bad team, and they found a way to win. They have the best player on the floor. Sabonis.
They have the 2 best players on the floor.
I didn't know Sabonis and Fox are better than anybody the Pistons have right now. That's where the Pistons are at a negative. When they played the Celtics when I was out there, Jaylen Brown didn't play, right? Yeah. They still have freaking Jason Tatum. They still have the best player on the floor by a wide margin. And that's every single night, especially now with Cade out.
Yeah, I think it's time to have the tough conversation that the Pistons are not good. And I think people in general kind of like the idea of rebuilds more than the actuality of it. It's fun during the offseason when you have cap space and you have draft picks, high draft picks. You kind of sell potential. I think people like the idea of potential, like the idea of overcoming this hump and getting better. And that's kind of what a lot of fandom is built on, kind of going on this journey with a team. And, sometimes you get excited for a book or a movie and it's been hyped up for a while. And then you read the book or watch the movie and it's oh, actually this stinks, right? This stinks. Whatever I thought it was going to be, this stinks. I'm glad I was excited for it, yada, yada. And I get that. And I would just say, I think for fans, sometimes there's a disconnect as far as what is the best decision for the team and what's the best decision for the fandom, right? Like I was going back and forth with a fan last week about Killian, and they were like, and I wasn't just picking on that fan, I've seen it from enough people. I don't quote tweet things unless one is so absurd that I just have to put it out there so everybody can dunk on it, which I try not to do because I don't think dunking on people helps them become better people, but that's a completely different discussion.
I did it the other day too, and I immediately felt bad.
Yeah, I always say that. Like I really try hard not to, but some days I'm just on Twitter too much. So whoever that was, I apologize, even though you did say something.
Sincere apology from both co-hosts of the Pistons Pulse to anybody we've dunked on Twitter.
Yeah, even though sometimes y'all say some wild stuff. But I think that sometimes people get into like the fallacy of I'm a fan, I want to watch something good, and the team isn't providing that, therefore something must be done. And sometimes, and I think when they say it to, like a beat writer like myself, who they kind of see me as like the bridge between the fandom and the team. And I'm like, actually don't have to do anything. Like sometimes you just suck and that's just how it goes. They kind of see it as like not holding the team accountable for being bad. So like, I get it. I would just say that nothing in the NBA is linear. Like whatever you expect, like things that don't happen the way you expect a lot of times. I kind of brought up the example with the Grizzlies, like they were 12-5, and I covered them, and they were talking about, we're going to set the tone with defense, all this stuff. They saw Mike Conley and Marcus Gasol, and that Jaren Jackson, that was his rookie year before they got Ja. And everybody in Memphis is like, oh, grit and grind is still alive. Like, all right, like this is awesome. And like by the end of the year, JB Bickerstaff got fired. Marcus Gasol was traded. They traded Mike that next summer, and the team ended up being pretty bad. And kind of what I've learned from covering the NBA is one thing's changed very fast. So you can't really put too much stock into individual games or even individual weeks. And you kind of have to look at things. To me, I like to look at things at 15 to 20 game sample sizes, right? Like that gives you an example of where the team's at. But two, sometimes things just don't work out and it's nobody's fault. Like for the Kings game, like Sabonis gets 2 offensive rebounds toward the end. The first one is because Marvin Bagley switched onto him. No, Marvin Bagley switched onto De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
And he was, at the top of the key.
And Killian mistimed his jump, Omari.
Killian just mistimed his jump. So, people were saying, well, it's Dwayne's fault because he should have put Jalen Duren in there. So people didn't like when I pointed out that Bagley was actually the right choice in that scenario, but it would have been the same thing with Duren. He would have been on De'Aaron Fox. They would have run the same action. It would have been the same result. And Sabonis is also just a really good rebounder. The second one was like, I think Herter missed a 3 long rebound. And Sabonis just shut it down.
Yeah, they had doubled Sabonis.
Yeah.
And so they were in rotation. Burks was on him because of a switch.
Right.
And here's the other thing I want to make a quick point of, Mark. Every time they switch isn't the scheme. Sometimes they switch because they're in drop and the guard doesn't get over the screen and then they have no choice but to switch.
Yeah.
But Burks didn't really get a good box out. Jaden Ivey was at half court after contesting the Herter 3, didn't come back in and get involved. No. So like, we all want to put it on Casey. Oh, they shouldn't have switched, or Duren should have been in. Well, when do we hold the players accountable also?
Yeah, and I think the solution in that scenario would have been to have 2 bigs on the floor. The way you talk about 2 bigs, so you have Isaiah Stewart and you have one of Bagley or Duren. Now you have 2 big bodies and one of those guys can shoot. So you're fixing a lot of issues, but they don't have that.
Yep.
So, so sometimes it's just, like it just is what it is. Like, they didn't make the plays. But it didn't matter who you put out there. The reality is that they're short. A lot of guys would have made a difference in that scenario. And, sometimes you just lose, or even with Killian. Sometimes, you use the pick on a guy and he's coming along slowly. And that doesn't mean you cut him because, as a fan, you don't like watching him. Like, it's fair to not like watching a player. But as a team, you selected this player and you owe it to the player. You owe it to yourself as a front office to help him succeed because he's still in a contract, for 2 more years. Well, this season and next season, and either you're going to pay him at some point or you're not, but you need to have information. And I just think a lot of times, because we should move on from this and start talking about some of the players, but I think a lot of times fans kind of see their frustration as a justification for dramatic things to happen. And sometimes it's just like, you just got to let things play out. And as a beat writer, I try to just stay the level and just let things play out. Killian either becomes a good player or he continues to struggle to shoot, right? The Pistons either get healthy or you continue to have to pick between Bagley and Duren at the end of the game. And Bagley can score, but he has weaknesses as a defender. And Duren is 19 years old and he's going to make mistakes. And it's just, sometimes you're limited to your personnel. All coaches are. And it just is what it is, So, people have issues with Dwayne and they always had and always will. But in that scenario, just, they just lost that game because the Kings were a better team, and that's how it was.
Well,
that's how that happened.
We talked about this. The lineups are limited, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody wants to get the rebounding lineup in the game whenever they lose because they gave up offensive rebounds.
Right.
But if they would have lost because they couldn't score the basketball, everybody would have wanted the scoring lineup. And I just want to make one more quick point. And I agree with you. Let's let this play out because they did bring a new defensive scheme, Amari. Yeah. And so I'm being patient, even though I've called it out and highlighted and wrote articles on the scheme and where they're not doing it effectively. But let's give these rookies and this 19-year-old Jalen Duren a whole season to see if they can figure out. Yeah. Now, if in game 80, these guys still are making the same mistakes, now we got to figure out who to point the fingers at. Like, why did the players not get better? Did the coaches not coach it the right way? Like, and those are answers we may not have. We don't get it watch practice. You don't even get it like watch an entire practice and that part of it. But you're right. Let's move on. Let's talk the Marvin Bagley versus Jalen Duren. And where do you think Duren is at, what he has shown? Marvin Bagley may have had his best game on Sunday. Like, for all the critiques about, he doesn't rebound, and the end of that game, I thought he had one of his better games. Do you think they should or will keep starting Bagley? Should they start Duren? What can they do with that big man rotation?
Yeah, it's just tough because the only way you can really play them together is if one of them shoots. It's not going to be Duren. Bagley is probably the slightly better shooter of the two. But I asked Wayne about it the other week, and he said we don't necessarily want. I actually asked him in LA last week, and he said we actually don't want Bagley to shoot either.
Okay.
We want him to stick to what he's good at, which is rebounding, putbacks. He's got, just great touch around the rim from mid-range a little bit. Keep doing those things. And because of that, we've seen those two players mostly staggered. Like, we'll probably still see two big here and there, just depending on the scenario, but you can't really do it the same way you can with Isaiah. So I guess the question for me is eventually do they start to prioritize just developing Duren, because he does have vastly more upside defensively. And clearly he is NBA ready in other areas like, rebounding. He's already a plus rebounder in a lot of ways. Better offensively than defensively, actually. But the same kind, I think D-Slat. And just whether it's, rolling or, putbacks or whatever, he can already do all those things. So, athletically he translates. Now let's, give him a chance to really learn how to be a good NBA defender. I think there's a line there they have to kind of toe, because it doesn't make sense to have him pick up 3 fouls and, the first quarter against Anthony Davis, right? There's just some matchups that he's going to struggle with. But I guess to me, that battle is more so we know what Bagley is, we know what he gives us, and we have to play him because we need that scoring, we need that rebounding and that size. But do they come to a point where they say, Jalen Duren is, we love this kid, we had him top 5 on our draft board, we're going to prioritize giving him reps. Like, let's say we put him in at the end of that Kings game, on Sunday. Maybe it's just, we don't know if it's going to make a difference, but he'll get that late game experience. That helps. And I think if that's the argument for him playing late, then I'd like that argument, because that does make more sense than I think just expecting him to get a rebound that he was not in a position to get. Right?
Well, and I don't know that this really matters for the starting or not, Amari, but there's a conditioning question with Jalen Duren as well. Yeah. And I'm not saying he doesn't work hard. We may have talked about this on the pod already, but some people are just can get in better condition than other people's. Like, there's some innate genetic natural, and he's a large human being that's only 19 years old. Yeah. And so it may not be easy for him to get in shape, but between foul trouble and being able to play, like, I think a lot of times people want to see him play 34 minutes. He's never played 34 minutes in his life. I think I looked the other day in college, he had 6 games where he played 30 plus minutes and averaged 25. So he's just not going to play those many minutes, especially when you're playing an 82 game schedule. Yeah. So I'm excited, and I will admit, he has already been better than what I even thought. I was super high on his long-term upside. He's been more effective on an NBA floor than what I even thought. Now, there are some flaws at times, and as long as we saw the short roll passing on Sunday, which I love, and as long as he continues to get some of that usage, then I'm all about him playing. And I would love to see him and Stu start the final 20 games of the year, because I think that could be the front court of the future for this Pistons team.
Yeah, no doubt. I think he's very obviously talented. I did the story with Rashard Lewis the week before last, and I talked to him about, Jalen. And, there's just a lot of rookie stuff he has to go through. And he's also the youngest guy in the NBA, so I think it's a little bit more excavated for him, maybe compared to a guy who comes in at 19, 20, 21 years old. But, Rashard was just like, all right, son, use the ice baths. Use the ice baths after the games. You might feel fine, but you play a lot of basketball by January. you were to tell me that I wish I'd begun doing this sooner. And it's just stuff like that I think he has to learn as the season goes on, like the conditioning. Like you mentioned, he had not played that many minutes before. Guys think they're in shape, and then they start playing 3-4 games a week, and you're traveling, and you're sleeping at odd hours, and then you're like, oh, actually, this is a lot of basketball. And maybe I can't, maybe I'm not in good condition. It's a whole different level of conditioning. And I think he's probably got a little bit better since the start of the season just from playing. But again, it's probably never a level he can get to. And it's probably the reason why we've kind of seen him capped at 25 minutes most nights because they're trying to save him for the next guy.
That's a good point, Amari. I remember this, obviously completely different level. So I'm not trying to make the comparison, everybody. But when I went from JUCO basketball, where you got Christmas break off, you got your summers off, you got the fall and spring, you were doing stuff, but not quite as intense. The scattering wasn't as intense. The weightlifting wasn't as intense. And then I thought I loved basketball. I didn't think I did love basketball, but then I went Division I, and it was like, it tested me that first year. It was a lot because I was up there in the summer working out, training. In the fall, we're doing workouts and running and lifting and all that stuff. Then the season starts, and it's 7 days a week, and they got you in study hall. And believe it or not, I really did go to class. I was at American University, so we definitely went to class there. Yeah. But it became a lot. And I remember there was in a point where it wasn't even physically, emotionally or mentally. And I was the guy that lived and breathed basketball, Amari, and I wasn't doing a whole lot of extracurriculars. I was pretty focused. But even for someone like me, I was like, man, this is a lot. And then you come back and you figure it out, and it's not as much. But for these rookies, for Jalen, for Jaden Ivey's going to go through this at some point. If he doesn't, it's going to be incredible, especially with the weight that's going to be put on him now. But it's a transition from playing, 35 games in college and playing 2 games a week and not traveling as much to what these guys are doing now. So I don't know that it's bad to limit these Jalen Duren minutes especially and let him just kind of work his way into this thing.
No, I don't think it's bad at all. Even just from covering the league for a few years, I grew up, born and raised in Detroit, watched the Pistons, all that. It's one thing to watch 82 games on TV and you're not really thinking about what their life is like, but not following them around on the road and at home and everything else. You got to practice every other day. And our travel's a little bit different because, they're flying private, we're flying commercial, so we have to jump through more hoops. But even so, just the physical toll is insane. And you realize you kind of hear about guys who didn't love basketball and they didn't work out because they didn't love it, or yada yada. And you kind of think, well, if you're making billions of dollars to do it, how much do you need to love it? And some guys can compartmentalize and say, all right, it's very lucrative, so even if I don't love it, I can still power through and do it. But like I said, it's a lot of basketball. And if you are spending time doing something that you don't like as much as they're doing it, then that's going to wear you down. And yeah, it makes a lot more sense. So that's why they scout guys so thoroughly and ask questions and stuff, because they understand you really have to be committed to this. And there's a lot of stuff Jalen Duren's learning now that you just don't necessarily know until you go through it for the first time. He's played, but he missed a game or two. So this is it's 15, 16 games in. He's still got 60, 65 games in front of him. It's a long season. He's playing 3 or 4 a week. Yeah, I think it makes complete sense that they're not just putting them out there to die, basically.
And when we talk about that, you think about the teams that make these deep playoff runs, and then they play, if it's an Olympics year or Eurobasket, whatever, and you think about when they talk about those guys coming back in those kind of off seasons, you understand why it just one thing runs into the next and they don't truly get those. Yeah. But we got to go to a quick short break. And then, Amari, we're bringing Wes on. We're going to do some sheet or sham here. We're going to have a lot of fun here for the final 15 or 20 minutes.
All right. Hey, Carlos, just a quick idea. How about if I say, hey, this is Sean Windsor, and you say, hey, this is Carlos Smaras, and I'll go, and then we'll go back. You want to try that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Hey, this is Sean Windsor.
And this is Carlos Menares.
And we are the team behind Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean, where we are going to talk about, you guessed it, sports, but lots of other stuff. Like what, Carlos?
Oh, we're going to talk about your favorite subject, Sean, food. Probably more food. Arts, culture, sports, TV, movies, you name it. If it's happened in Detroit, we're going to talk about it.
And sometimes we're going to have guests in who obviously know a lot more than we do about just about everything. But we're going to have some Free Press journalists to talk about big stories, folks from the sports world. We're going to be out every Thursday. You can find this podcast wherever you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We hope you'll join us.
We're back with segment 3, and we're going to bring in our guy, Wes Davenport, for a game of Sheed or Sham. Hey, me and Bryce are in the same room, so if there was any accusations or wonderment of, there being any home cooking, Bryce can see that I don't have any cards up my sleeve, nothing.
Is supper on the line for the game tonight?
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm on the, I'm on a company dime when I'm traveling, so I would not make you pay for my food, but the free press is going to pay for it. But we could make some other sort of gentleman's agreement, I think.
Okay, perfect. All right, Wes, let's go.
2 little disclaimers on this one. So the first one is just due to my schedule. These are all before the Kings game. So if some of them are outdated, that's on me, and I'm sorry. Second is the last 2 times we played this, you guys tied. So the first question is going to count for 2 wins. And Omari's still up 1-0. So who wants the question first?
I'll go first. Why not?
All right, Amari's going to go first.
Omari, you're going first. All right, so Omari, Sheed or Sham, Jaden Ivey leads the team in minutes per game.
He's thinking really hard on this one. And he can't cheat. This is the best part about this.
Well, I never cheat.
Yeah, that's a lie. You can hear him clicking on his computer. So he can't do it here. His phone's across the room.
I've never cheated.
I have access. I have control of the MacBook we were recording on. So Amari cannot cheat.
I deny this accusation. I have never cheated. I am a very fair person. I would never do that. See, this is one of the ones where it's like, if it's a question, then that leads me to think that, it must be true. But I'm going to go Sham.
I think it's Sheed, so I will go Sheed.
It's Sham. He's second. He's behind Cade.
Thank you. I was like, there's no way he's playing more minutes than Cade. My logic for Sham.
So he's getting 32. Cade's at 33, or was.
I'm like, because they're splitting minutes at the 1 and 2 with Cade, Killian, and Jaden. I was just like, there is no way Jaden's number 1.
Okay, so Omari, because you got that one right, that means so far on the year, you are up 3-0 in Sheed or Sham.
That is ridiculous. You know what's sad? I wasn't even thinking about Cade. Like, I've already removed Cade from my mind for the season. That I was like, the only other person I thought of was Boyan.
That's going to count like 2 wins for me. Because
it did.
Yeah, but it did. But like, we're in the same room. So like, there could be no accusations of, cheating or home cooking. Like, this is just going to be
He didn't even know the answer. You just go based off the question he asked and the context in which he asked it and try to outthink him.
Like, I was a good test taker growing up, so you kind of have to read between the lines sometimes. That's how.
Next question.
But it's multiple choice.
Next question.
I'm going to have to change up my strategy on these now. I think Omari might be figuring me out too much. All right, well, Bryce, you first then. So, Sheed or Sham, Boyan has the most free throw attempts on the team this season.
Sham.
I'm also going Sham.
Sheed. It's true.
Oh,
Stop.
wow.
So this is pre-Kings game, but he had 78 free throw attempts. Sadiq was second. He had 73. Stu was actually third, 65. And then Ivy fourth at 63.
I would have guessed Isaiah was number 1.
Yeah, I knew Stu had been getting to the free throw line a ton. And this team, we've talked about it, Omari. This team is getting to the free throw line at an incredible rate. Like, I don't know what the history of bad teams getting to the free throw line as much as the Pistons are, but I can't imagine it happens very often. So it's pretty impressive how often they're getting to the free throw line.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's been one of the best races in the league. So.
All right, so next one, Omari, you first. Sheed or Sham, per Basketball Reference, Jaden Ivey has had his shot blocked the most on the team.
Does Basketball Reference really have this stat?
They did. I found it. It was hidden somewhere, but I got there.
I'm going to go Sham.
Sheed.
It's Sheed.
Ooh,
Yes.
Okay.
He gets a shot blocked a lot. Do you happen to have the list? Like, do you have it written down? Who was next?
I got the top 3. So Ivy was at 23 shot attempts that were blocked. Boyan was second. He had 18. And then Cade third with 16.
So here's the thing. So Cade's missed before the Kings game 5. So I think Cade was probably on track to lead that, but he's missed time. So that probably set him back a little
So
bit.
23 that's more than 1 per game. He's getting his shot blocked. And like you said, Cade probably, if it's per game, is probably more. How many did you say Cade was?
16.
Yeah, so probably per game right around the same, I guess.
Probably about the same, yeah.
So that would be a really interesting stat. You're going to have to text me how I can get to that because I want to just go look throughout the league and see kind of what the averages are for other teams.
Definitely. Yeah, I'll text you it after this. Okay, so next one, Bryce, you are up. Sheed or Sham, Sadiq Bey is 9th in the NBA in free throw percentage.
Sheed, because I feel like he hadn't missed one for a long time.
Well, I want to say Sheed, but I feel like I should go Sham just to keep it spicy instead of we have a winner and a loser every single round. At the same time, there's no way I'd be able to, I can't say I've looked at the league leaders for free throw percentage this season, so I wouldn't know anyway. You said Sheed?
Yeah.
I'm just going to go Sham.
It's Sheed.
Yeah.
Yes.
I figured.
What's his
He's just a touch under 92. Next one up. So, Amari, this is you. And a little score update. Bryce, you've got 2. Amari, you got 1. We have 3 questions left.
I
So
gotta
let's
get
not
one.
tie again.
I'm down 3-0 right now. No, I feel like since we're sitting here in person, we're going to purposely go against each other every single round just to make things a little more interesting.
Bryce, you don't have to get one, but it's okay.
No, I do have to get one. Supper's not going to be very much fun tonight if I lose three rounds or 3 points tonight and I'm down 4-0.
It'll be fun for me.
Huh?
It'll be fun for me.
I may not even go. I'll just go back to Kansas.
All right, well, Omar, you get all the power because you're answering this first. So Isaiah Livers has the highest percentage of his 2-point field goal attempts assisted on the team, on the Pistons. Very specific, this one.
The highest
Sheed or Sham?
percentage of his 2-point field goals assisted. Yeah, this is one of the ones where it's like, it's so specific, it makes you want to say Sheed. But at the same time, you have Isaiah, who I would think has had a lot of his baskets assisted, but it's higher percentage is not the most. It's just like overall percentage of their
field goal makes or field goal attempts.
It would be okay.
Oh no, makes. Sorry, makes.
Makes.
It would be. Well, it has to be makes because it's an assist. You can't assist and miss.
Good point, Mark.
That's good.
My gut says Sheed. My mind says Sham. I'm just going to trust my gut and say Sheed.
Dang it. No, I wanted Sham. I think it's Jalen Duren.
It is Sham. It's Marvin Bagley. He's first. Yeah, it's Sham.
Okay, so I do you have the percentages?
So Bagley was 87.5, and then Livers was actually second, 83 1/3.
What is Duren's?
I only grabbed the top 2. I have to go back and look.
You don't think you didn't think Duren would have the most assisted? Like, how many times is he getting a bucket without an assist? Oh, well, offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
That was what I was looking for Duren. I was like, yeah, I mean, if it's a lob, yeah, but I would guess he's probably had more offensive rebounds.
Well, yeah, because like you said earlier, he's crushing on the offensive board. Yeah. So those take away that's going to change the percentage.
Yeah, so that's why I could actually see it being Livers. Not that Livers even takes that many attempts inside the arc.
He's just not creating on his own.
But like, if he is, it's probably because he cut.
Yep.
Or it was like fast break or something like that. So that was a West special right there. It was like it was conceivably true, but it made me think too hard.
Livers isn't creating on his own. He's not getting a ton of offensive boards. I would assume Livers might have the highest over, like even because most of his 3-point makes are going to be assisted as well. I mean, I know most of the teams is, but I would assume his are higher than just about anybody. So, all right, what is it? 2-2 now?
No,
3-1.
I think you're at 3-1. So I'd have to get the next 2 to tie.
You feel the pressure?
Yeah, and there are exactly 2 left. So we got to avoid the tie. We keep doing ties. We can't do more ties. All right, Bryce, you first. This is the next one. Sheed or Sham. The Detroit Pistons are last in the league in offensive rebounds allowed per game.
Sham.
You said that confidently. You said they're last in the league in offensive rebounds allowed.
Yes.
Per game. Oh,
per game.
Wait, does that mean they're allowing the most offensive rebounds?
Yeah. Well, they're not allowing the least. We know that.
You're not allowing the least. You're not allowing the least.
Last in the league would be allowing the most.
Yeah.
To be clear.
So they are allowing the most offensive rebounds.
That's what he said.
Which means that they're not hitting the defensive glass.
I said Sham, right? Did I say Sham?
Yes.
That's what I wanted to say. Very You have to say Sheed. If you say Sham, I win.
That's because Wes didn't give us enough questions.
We can make some up on the spot.
All right, Sheed.
It is sham. They're
29th,
second
right?
to last.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're second to last.
This isn't fair. I just did an article the other day where I looked this stat up. So I know specifically where they rank. Now, the only thing was the stat I used for the article was per 100 possessions, but I had looked up per game also. So I knew exactly where they were because I was looking up some of their overall defensive rating, points against, and how many offensive rebounds they had given up. So that's a dub. We're still going to do the last question, but that's a dub.
Question. That is a dub.
Let's go.
I'm just glad I don't have to make one up.
Hey, it's 3-1, right? So this is going to be Amari, the Golden State Warriors. 4?
Yeah.
No, 3, right? No, the overall.
Yes. It'll be 3-1 after this, yeah.
Come back.
All right.
We got to start having more sheet or sham.
All right, Omari, last one. Sheet or sham. Of Alec Burks' made 3-point attempts, over 66% of them are unassisted.
Of his made,
I went down the rabbit hole.
Of his made 3-point attempts, over 66% were unassisted.
Yeah, so he's ISOing and hitting a bunch of threes, and that's
Don't
the majority of
explain the
his
question to him. Make him figure it out on his own.
No, I know it. Yeah, no, I got
It doesn't matter. He's already lost.
I got it. Sham.
Sheet.
It's Sheed.
Wow. What?
I worked you today.
This was rigged. Wow.
What you just said, it can't be rigged because we're in the same room. Yeah, now Amari's upset.
Yeah, but Bryce has his phone on the table, and I seen him check it.
I looked once, and it was for you to move the mic closer to you. Wes, hey, we got a few minutes here, man. I feel like you never get a chance to talk about the Pistons. So you've been essentially a lifelong fan, right? Like, where are you at right now with this team?
Just generally, I mean, the Cade injury hurts.
What's your frustration level? What's your excitement level to watch the team night in, night out?
Well, I've watched much worse Pistons basketball than what we're going to be getting now. So I'm still excited to go watch them any chance, every time they're on. But frustration with the injuries, yes. Nothing outside of that. It's just some bum luck.
Maury, you got anything else before we go eat?
I will return in Sheet and Sham. This is a minor comeback.
You will return?
This is a minor setback for a major comeback. So I'm just going to tease that right now. Like, it's like that end of the MCU movie. It's like,
what? Black
Panther will return. Morris Sankoff II will return.
What is MCU?
He will reclaim his crown.
What's
Don't
MCU?
do that, Bryce. Don't do that, Bryce.
It's the series of movies that Angela Bassett.
Okay, so you know what's funny?
Was a part of.
I really didn't know who that was.
You know who Angela Bassett was?
I don't know who anybody is.
Do you know?
I kind of know who Denzel is.
No, okay, all right, okay. You redeemed yourself.
I'm trying to think of like anybody.
Samuel Jackson.
Yeah,
that's Samuel Jackson. Okay. You probably haven't seen an Angela Bassett movie. She's been in like a lot of movies.
So the only movie I even recognized was How Stella Got Her Groove Back, but I've actually never watched it. I just know the name of it. Okay. Is it a good movie?
I haven't seen that either. All right. Well, I just want the people to know that me and Bryce are going to get dinner, and I'm going to try to take him dinner, and I'm going to try to take him to a restaurant that's got, some uniqueness to it.
No, every restaurant has something
all together on the plate.
No, absolutely not. And we're not going to put chips on a sandwich.
No, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that.
Back up. Don't do that at the end of the episode, Bryce.
Here's the thing. Everybody thinks this is a bit about Angela Bassett and all this other. Like, it's not.
It is a bit, but it's also
not a
real.
Bit. How's it a bit? It's true.
It can be true and a bit.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I thought a bit was like you lean into it for the sake of entertainment.
You are. Like, it's still true, but you're leaning into it for the sake of entertainment. Like,
because
it's true,
I actually interact with it, and I could just not say anything. Even Anjanette was mad. Anjanette liked the tweet.
No, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, like, it is a bit. Like, it's true, but it's a bit. Like, I don't think a bit has to be like a fake thing.
We can talk about it over supper.
All right, we'll talk about it over dinner.
Wes, appreciate you. Omari, my guy, take it away.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will hopefully have some Cade updates and, the whole nine this time next week. So definitely a big week for the team. Shout out to our editor, Kerry Jr. II, our executive producer, Anjanette Delgado, and our sports editor, Kirkland Crawford. Also, shout out Wes. We'll talk to you all next week.